Mike and Sarah looked like the perfect couple to everyone else. They lived in a cozy little town with green hills all around, building a life most folks would be jealous of. Mike fixed cars for a living, his hands always smudged with grease, while Sarah ran a small bakery that always smelled like warm bread and sweet treats. Their house wasn't fancy, but it felt homey, with a garden Sarah worked on every Saturday. To anyone looking in, they seemed totally happy. They'd been hitched for 8 years and had 2 kids, twins named Emma and Jack, both 6. Those kids were their whole world, full of the love Mike and Sarah used to share so fiercely. Their giggles echoed through the house, giving it a lively vibe that hid the strains starting to show between their parents. Mike started picking up on changes bit by bit. Sarah, who used to be all smiles and super loving, was pulling away. Her grins looked fake, her laughs empty. She stayed late at the bakery, often getting home after the kids were out cold. When Mike asked why she was late, she'd shrug it off with some excuse about new pastries or paperwork. It stung, but Mike wanted to trust her, chalking it up to work stress or parenting struggles. They weren't rolling in cash, but they got by okay. Big vacations weren't their thing, maybe a weekend at the lake or a picnic in the hills. Still, they always made birthdays and anniversaries special, even if it was low-key. Life was steady, routine, and honestly, kind of boring. But Mike started feeling uneasy. He noticed stuff he'd ignored before, a whiff of cologne on Sarah's clothes that wasn't his, her dressing up more than usual, and a weird, guarded look in her eyes when she thought he wasn't looking. These things ate at him, making him start to wonder. At night, lying awake while Sarah slept next to him, Mike couldn't shake the feeling something was off. He kept replaying their conversations, looking for anything he might have missed. He wanted to trust the woman he married, but his gut was screaming otherwise. He had no clue his life was about to flip upside down. That uneasy feeling in my chest turned into a nagging need to know more. I started watching Sarah's routine closer. Every little thing she said about her day, every small change in how she acted, I was on it. I couldn't say exactly when my suspicions started feeling real, but I knew I couldn't ignore them anymore. Sarah and her brother, Chris, had always been tight. I used to think their close bond was cool, even awesome. Chris was a few years younger, smooth-talking and funny, the kind of guy who lit up any room. He'd just moved to town, landing a job as a landscape designer. He stopped by our place a lot, and everyone, especially the kids, loved having their uncle around. But the more I watched, I couldn't miss a weird vibe between Chris and Sarah. It was small stuff, a look that lasted too long, a quick touch that felt off. At first, I told myself I was crazy for thinking something messed up about siblings. But that voice in my head wouldn't shut up. I started seeing patterns. Sarah would leave the room to take phone calls, keeping her voice low but excited. Chris seemed to show up when I was out or busy. There was this sneaky vibe to how they acted, and the more I tried to explain it away, the more it felt like the truth was staring me in the face. One night, I decided to test my gut. I acted like I was heading out for an errand, slamming the door loud enough to sell it. I parked my truck a bit down the street, out of sight, and waited. Time dragged. Minutes felt like forever. Just when I was starting to think I was paranoid, I saw Chris's car roll into the driveway. My stomach dropped like a rock. I couldn't stay put. I snuck back to the house, moving slow, dreading what I might see. Through the half-open living room curtains, I spotted Sarah and Chris on the couch, sitting way too close for siblings. Chris had his hand on Sarah's knee, and she didn't push it away. My breath stopped, my head spinning with what I was seeing. I couldn't keep looking. I slipped back to my truck, sat there in the dark, and gripped the wheel so hard my knuckles went pale. My head was a mess. Anger, betrayal, and confusion all crashing together. Was I seeing things raw? Was I losing it? The thought that I might be right lit a fire in me that could have burned me up. Still, I decided I needed more proof before I said anything to either of them. I had to face the truth, no matter how bad it was. The next few days were a blur of suspicion and hyper-alertness. I felt like a stranger in my own house, watching everything like it wasn't my life. Sarah kept up her usual routine, acting all happy and calm like nothing was up. Chris played his part too, all charm and smiles. But to me, every word and grin felt like a slap in the face. The betrayal I was starting to believe in was eating me alive, and I needed something solid to prove. I made up my mind to follow Sarah. It wasn't easy. Spying on someone I used to trust completely made me feel like crap. But the doubt was worse, and I couldn't take it anymore. One night, when Sarah said she had to stay late at the bakery for a big order, I tailed her. I kept my distance, following her car through our familiar town streets until she turned down a road that didn't go to the bakery. My heart was racing as I saw she was heading to the park just outside town. That place was quiet, surrounded by thick woods, and nobody went there at night. I parked my truck a bit away and went on foot, sticking to the shadows. The cold air stung, but I didn't care. All I could think about was Sarah. She pulled up near the park's edge, where the trees threw long, dark shadows. I watched her get out and walk towards someone waiting under a big oak. Even from far off, I knew it was Chris. He stepped out of the dark, and they hugged. Not a normal sibling hug, but something way too close. My chest felt like it was caving in, my worst nightmares coming true right there. They sat on a bench under the tree, heads close, talking. I couldn't catch their words, but the way they moved said it all. Chris brushed some hair off Sarah's face, and she leaned into it, her face soft and warm. It was the kind of look she hadn't given me forever, a look that used to be just for me. Anger hit me so hard I almost lost it. My fists balled up, and I wanted to charge over and let them have it. But something stopped me. I knew starting a fight there in the dark wouldn't fix anything. Instead, I pulled out my phone and snapped pictures, each one feeling like a punch to the gut. I needed proof, something real to back up what I already knew. Back in my truck, I just sat there, the weight of what I'd seen crushing me. I stared at the photos, each one a harsh reminder of the betrayal that broke my world. I had the truth now, cold and brutal. But what next? I had to face Sarah eventually, but I needed to think it through. My head was too full of anger and pain. That night, I didn't go home. I couldn't look at her yet. I just drove around, those photos burning a hole in my pocket and the image of Sarah and Chris stuck in my head. The betrayal was like a cut that wouldn't stop bleeding, and I knew nothing would ever be the same. The days after were a mix of burning rage and cold planning. I couldn't erase what I'd seen. The betrayal had turned my life upside down. Just confronting Sarah didn't feel like enough. It needed more than words. The anger inside me was screaming for payback. First, I needed more proof. I had to lay it all out. For a few days, I tracked their every move like a hawk. I got into Sarah's phone and found texts, bold, personal ones. I printed them all, building a file of their betrayal. Every new find made my anger grow. My rage was like a fire that wouldn't die. I started dreaming up ways to make them pay. I wanted to expose their affair to everyone. This wasn't just about Sarah and Chris. It was about the life they'd taken from me. The trust, the love, the family we'd made was gone. They had to face the music. A chance came up faster than I thought. Our town was small, and gossip spread like wildfire. A community event was set for the weekend, one Sarah helped plan. It was the perfect moment. Everyone would be there, friends, neighbors, even Chris's coworkers. I pictured their faces when the truth came out. I spent days getting ready. I put together a slideshow of the photos I'd taken, paired with screenshots of their damning texts. It was airtight. I practiced what I'd say, my words sharp and heavy. This wasn't just about getting even. It was about making things right. The night of the event came. The community center was buzzing, full of people in a good mood. Sarah worked the crowd with her usual charm, clueless about what was coming. Chris was there too, his presence like a knife in my side. I waited until the speeches started. My time came, and I stepped up to the mic. I thanked everyone for showing up and supporting the event. My voice stayed calm, even with adrenaline pumping through me. Then, I said I had something big to share. The room went dead quiet. My words pulled everyone in. I put the first picture up on the screen, a shot of Sarah and Chris in the park. Their hug was impossible to miss. The crowd gasped, and whispers of shock spread fast. I kept going, showing one piece of evidence after another. Each slide tore through their fake front. When I got to the text messages, the room was a mess of noise. People were whispering, some gasping in disbelief. Sarah's face was pure panic, her cool act falling apart by the second. Chris just stood there, his usual smooth vibe replaced by a stunned look. I stared right at them. My voice didn't waver as I said, "This is what betrayal feels like. This is what it does." I walked off the stage without waiting for them to say anything. The job was done. As I stepped out into the night, I felt a dark kind of satisfaction. The crowd's chatter faded behind me. The weight of what I'd done hit me hard, like a heavy coat. For the first time in days, I felt a tiny bit of relief. The truth was out there. It wouldn't fix the hurt they caused, but it was a start. This wasn't over, but for now, I let myself breathe. The fallout from dropping that bomb was instant and wild. I figured there'd be some talk, maybe some anger, but the reaction was way bigger. Sarah's perfect image fell apart. Friends turned their backs. People whispered in disgust wherever she went, and her spotless reputation was trashed. Chris didn't do any better. His coworkers and buddies pulled away, his charm useless against the shame. The town judged them hard and fast, and for a second, I felt like I'd won. But that feeling didn't last. The aftermath left a hole I didn't see coming. Our house, once full of family warmth, felt cold and empty. The kids picked up on the tension, their laughter gone quiet. Sarah barely looked at me, her eyes full of guilt mixed with defiance. She stuck around, maybe out of duty or stubbornness. I couldn't tell anymore. I knew spilling the truth was just the first step. My anger was still hot, but now it was mixed with a deep sadness I couldn't shake. I started thinking about what to do next, something that would hit them hard. They didn't just need to face consequences. They needed to feel the pain they'd caused me. I wanted them to hurt like I did. I started with Chris. He'd been dumb enough to mix his personal mess with his job, and that made him an easy target. Through a buddy at his work, I found out about a big landscaping deal he was banking on. It wasn't hard to plant doubts with his clients. A few anonymous emails, backed by the proof I had, made him look like a guy whose personal drama overshadowed his work. By the time the gossip hit his bosses, the deal was gone, and Chris was left trying to pick up the pieces. Seeing him struggle gave me a grim kind of joy, but it wasn't enough. Sarah had to pay too. Her bakery, once the heart of the town, started tanking as word of the affair got around. Customers stopped showing up, and online reviews got nasty. I didn't have to do anything. The town's judgment was punishment enough, but it didn't bring me any peace. As weeks turned to months, the cost of my revenge hit me. Sarah got quieter, her once lively spirit dulled by shame and being shut out. The kids, stuck in the middle of our broken family, got silent, their eyes full of questions I couldn't answer. I started wondering if what I'd done was worth it. And trying to get back at Sarah and Chris, I'd wrecked myself too. One night, sitting alone in the empty house, I found the file I'd put together. The photos, the texts, all the proof of their betrayal. It felt like stuff from someone else's life. I realized I'd been holding onto my anger like a shield against the pain of losing what we had. But that shield was a cage, keeping me stuck in bitterness with no way out. That night, I made a choice. I grabbed all of it. The photos, the printed texts, the digital files, and burned them. The fire ate up the evidence, its glow lighting up the dark around me. As the ashes fell, I felt a weird sense of relief. Letting go of the proof felt like letting go of some of the pain, even just a bit. In the days after, I started picking up the pieces, not just of my life, but of who I was. I tried therapy, something I used to think was a joke, and it turned out to be a place where I could deal with my pain without anyone judging me. I spent more time with the kids, trying to bring back the happiness we'd lost. Sarah and I stayed distant, but for the kids' sake, we figured out how to live under the same roof. Word got around that Chris had left town, looking for a fresh start somewhere else. I didn't tear his ear more. He was a part of my life I was done with. Sarah seemed different too, quieter, more thoughtful. Was it guilt, regret, or something else? I couldn't tell. We didn't talk about what happened, but we both knew things would never be like they were. Healing was a slow, bumpy road, full of steps back and small wins. I found comfort in little moments, a calm night with the kids, a real laugh that felt good, the slow return of hope. My anger didn't control me anymore, and while the scars from the betrayal stuck around, they became part of me instead of weighing me down. In the end, I saw that revenge didn't fix anything. It just brought more hurt. Forgiving, not Sarah or Chris, but myself, was the only way to move on. Letting go of the past was tough, but it was what I needed. So, I took it one day at a time, heading toward a future where I could find some peace. The weeks after I burned, all that evidence brought a strange calm. I thought I'd left it all behind, but something kept nagging at me, like the story wasn't done. Then, on a gray, still afternoon, a random run-in broke my sense of closure. The park, where I caught them, was quiet, just the sound of leaves rustling. I'd started walking there again, trying to make it mine. That day, a figure I hadn't seen in months stepped out of my memories. Chris. He was alone, sitting on that same bench where it all went down. He looked worn out, like lice had finally caught up with him. I should have turned around. Instead, I walked over, curiosity getting the better of me. He saw me coming, his eyes wide with surprise and something else. Maybe fear, maybe regret. He didn't run. Instead, he waved for me to sit. Against my gut, I did. We sat there quiet for a long time, the air thick with things unsaid. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough, barely above a whisper. "I've got something to tell you," he said, staring at the ground. What he said next turned my world upside down. Chris didn't just go along with the betrayal. He said Sarah had played him. He claimed she planned the affair, not out of love, but to get back at me. For what? My heart raced as he spilled the truth. Years back, before we got married, Sarah had found out about a stupid, short fling I'd had with someone she knew. I thought it was nothing, something she'd never know. But she did, and she'd held on to it like a weapon, waiting for her moment. Chris said his part in it wasn't about love or desire, but guilt. Sarah had opened up to him, turned their friendship into something twisted. She made herself sound like a victim of my betrayal, convincing him their affair was some kind of payback. It wasn't supposed to go this far, he said, his voice cracking. But once it started, I was in too deep. I didn't know if I could trust him. Part of me thought he was just trying to save his own skin. But another part, the part that knew how Sarah could control things, couldn't rule it out. If he was telling the truth, everything I'd done, all the pain I'd caused, was built on a lie. I left the park that day with my head spinning. Memories of Sarah started to shift, taking on a new, darker meaning. I noticed things I'd brushed off before, little moments that now seemed off. The way she always dives talk about loyalty, the small ways she chipped away at my confidence over the years. The feeling I'd been stuck in a game I didn't know I was playing. That night, I confronted Sarah, armed with Chris's words and my own doubts. She didn't deny it. Instead, she gave me a cold, bitter smile. "You always thought you were the one who got hurt," she said, her voice full of scorn. "But you were never as clean as you acted." Her words broke the last bit of the image I had of her, but they also set me free in a way I didn't expect. The truth hurt like hell, but it peeled away the lies I'd been holding onto. For the first time, I saw Sarah not as the woman I loved or the enemy I hated, but as a messed up person. And seeing her like that gave me the strength to let go. The last piece of my journey wasn't about getting even or even forgiving. It was about not caring anymore. Sarah packed up and left soon after our big talk, taking the last bits of the life we used to have. I didn't dwell on it. Chris was gone from my world too. Just a small part of a messy chapter 1 was ready to close. The park was still there. It stopped being a place of hurt and became a sign of pushing through. I kept walking, each step reminding me that life keeps going, no matter how bad the scars. As the seasons shifted, so did I. The anger and pain that used to eat me up turned into a steady drive to keep living. Not just despite what happened, but because of it. I couldn't change what went down, but I could decide what came next. Every day, I took another step, leaving the darkness of betrayal behind. And that's the end of this story. If you like going through this with me, give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more stories like this. Got any thoughts or experiences you want to share? Toss them in the comments. I'd love to see what you think. Thanks for sticking with me, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take it easy.